Paul. Hi, Snoopy.
All right, you can start whenever you wish. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Peter Klaus,
Hey, everybody.
VP of Biz Dev at Silver Bullet Mines. Go ahead, Peter, when you're ready.
Thank you. Sorry for the lighting. I'm in a hotel in London, Ontario, meeting with some investors, and the lighting in here is not good. But that means you don't have to look at me for that as well. So let's get started. Some of you know the story. It's a fascinating story, one of the most interesting ones that I've ever been involved with. We started out as a group of people looking to put a mine into production. We told people we'd be in production in under a year in Arizona. People snickered at us. And there you go. We started building the mill in September of 2021, and we commissioned that mill in September of 2022. In 1 year, we built a mill, gravity fed, to process the material from the Buckeye silver mine. Then we got an order for silver. I mean, it makes sense. If you're a silver mine, you should be selling silver. The funny thing was we could not pour doré. And this is where the story gets fascinating. Usually, for those of you who've seen a doré bar, it's usually ugly. It's about, this big. It's got some bubbles in it. And it's about 92% pure, whether it's gold or copper or silver, because that's as much as your average mill can get it to. The mill then sells it to a refinery or a smelter who can get those numbers up to 99.99. We can't. We couldn't even, however, smelt the material we were processing through our mill. It was black, it was crackled, and one member of the technical team said that's because there's an element in there other than silver and gold. Okay, let's try that. We took a bulk sample, which is a 200-ton sample. Sorry, let me get that right. We took concentrate from 200 tons of processed material, so fairly representative of that area. We took a sample from that and sent it out to a local lab. The local lab came back with elevated levels of platinum, palladium, and rhodium, platinum group elements. Also had elevated osmium, but I don't count the osmium, like 1,000 kilograms have sold since 2019. So ignore the osmium for now. But palladium and platinum and rhodium, there's some serious value there. We took a second round of samples just to make sure. Same answer came back, elevated platinum, palladium, rhodium. So what we have done is what any good scientist will do, doubt the data. We've taken the samples and sent them out to yet another independent lab for check assays. Those check assay results are supposed to be back any day now. And if they come back and they confirm what we got from the lab in Arizona, that means we've gone from sitting on a really nice silver story with a mine that had run X number of years at our own mill and pump out X million dollars a year. Now we've gone to the first producing platinum palladium mine in Arizona, and in fact, only the second outside of Stillwater in Montana in the United States. So we are all quite eager to get those check assays back, because they may change the face of mining in Arizona and in the continental United States. We're also waiting on a report from the CAMP, an unfortunately named group, the Center for Advanced Mineral Processing at the University of Montana. It is a world-famous technical university that specializes in mineral processing. We sent them a lot of material. There were some technical instructions with it, but the technical instructions boiled down to help. What is this? How do we process this? We have a mill that already exists. How do we build a box that fits onto our existing box so we can process the platinum and the palladium? Because if we run the material through our mill now, our tailings will be worth more than other people's ore. So we put the mill on hold until we get this figured out, and we're hoping that it's soon. So I've never seen a story that has evolved this quickly to the upside. I find it fascinating. I was a little grumpy when I first got these results, because I'm, the public face of the company, I should have known. How come we didn't know that we had platinum and palladium and rhodium in our silver material? And the answer I got back was, nobody has it in the area, so nobody tests for it, so nobody has it. We've done some inquiries of the majors around us, and it appears that they're pushing out some platinum and palladium as a byproduct of their copper porphyries. I went through their annual reports. There's no mention of platinum and palladium, the platinum group elements in there. And the answer for that is, when you're doing $5 billion a year in copper, who really cares if you're doing $50 million a year in palladium? So they include it in a line item called other minerals. They don't specify it out. We did some research and found a possible deposit owned by a third party half an hour south of us towards Tucson, which I must say is the birthplace of Linda Carter, along with Wonder Woman. And he holds it out as being a platinum, palladium, rhodium deposit that he's looking to sell for $6 million US. The more research we do, the more we find to support the thesis for platinum and palladium in our silver material. So here's our worst case scenario. We spend some money, we find out that we can't bolt this box onto this box to extract the platinum and palladium, or even the platinum and palladium was a blip, just a geologic burp, and there's no continuity to it. So our worst case scenario is we still have our silver mine. We still have our silver mill. We're where we were as we expected to be in August of 2022. So our worst case scenario is we're a producing silver mine. Our best case scenario, of course, is that the platinum and palladium, rhodium do run continually, and that we figure out a way to process it out and to extract the silver and the high-grade gold, and driving the value of our mineralized material per ton from silver and gold only to silver, gold, platinum, palladium, rhodium. That's the overview of the story. We're not chasing a porphyry. I'm not chasing a vein. I'm not putting a drill hole down hoping to catch some kind of geologic event. This is just straight science. How do you get the platinum, palladium out of the mineralized material? How do you get the gold and silver then out of the mineralized material after you've gotten the platinum, palladium out? So Paul, I'm happy to halt it there, or I can keep going into details about our mine up in Idaho.
So, Peter, what I thought we would do is we would take some questions, and I will ask the audience and repeat them to you in case you didn't get them or hear them.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. I noticed Paul's not helping out at all, and you're doing all
They can tell you.
How much debt are you holding, and do you plan to become profitable any day soon?
Did you get that? How much debt are you holding?
I did.
Okay.
There's about $650,000 of convertible debt, convertible at 30 cents. There's a warrant built into that. I think it's at 40 cents, might be at 50. I forget right now. It's 3-year debt. When we'll be profitable? To my eye, profitability is not the goal of a junior producer. Positive cash flow is. Because as you produce cash flow, you can reinvest into your properties, you can reinvest into your mill, and you can expand operations. So my goal within the company is positive cash flow, not profitability.
So when is your positive cash flow gonna come about?
Can't answer that question.
I gotta wait to hear from the Center for Advanced Mineral Processing. They're gonna tell me how big a box I need here and what are the details of this box. We can then price out that box, figure out what CapEx we need, how long it will take to install, and then we'll have an answer to that question. I'm not dodging you, I just don't have that data yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have several questions. I'm very curious about your PG. I want to know a little about the grades, the strike length. I want to know also how deep you have to drill in order to get these samples. Whether you've done some magnetic surveys to capture the extent of the resistivity to have
Right.
an IP surveys. This is curious because, you're really going out on a limb here where you're saying you got PG, and I bet you have zinc too. You probably have some zinc so
Zinc didn't show up in the element analysis, like very little.
Okay. And I'd also like to know
Oh,
a little.
sorry, go ahead, sir.
I'd like to know a little about your host rock and also the age of the rock. Is it Miocene, Eocene? Can you give me some details about the age of the underlying rock and a little bit about the alteration zones?
Okay, so as for strike length, we don't know yet. The first round of samples came from 200 tons that was processed into concentrate. So 200 tons sounds like a lot, but everybody in mining knows that's next to nothing. So our second round consisted of 42 samples we took from around the mill site and the mine site. And we didn't just grab one rock and throw it in the sample bag. They tried to grab rocks in a given area and put them all into the one sample and crush that into a sample to make it as representative of the area as possible. They did that from inside the adit, inside the decline, and also from material that had been stockpiled at the mill site. That's the second round of samples. And we're waiting on the check assays for those first two rounds of samples. As to your question about depth and strike length, there's some interesting evidence as to what that might be. This property was optioned to a third party who did drilling in 2017. They brought in a geologist who had never walked the property before, who was instructed by a potential financier where to drill. He set up the drill casings, and from what I hear, against the recommendation of the geologist on site at the time, and drilled away. That's set out in the geologic report that was filed with the stock exchange when the company went public in January of 2021. I think it's either page 53 or page 54 that gives you a description of the drill program and the drill results. Some of that was at depth, some of it was shallow. But we found that drill core. The optionee had never split the majority of it, had not tested the majority of it. So that's like finding free money at surface. We have begun to split it and test it. The rest will be relogged and stored for future splitting and future testing. I don't know what stage the splitting is at, or if they have sent a lab yet, but that's the process that they're in.
Well, so you're doing diamond drilling. It sounds like you're doing diamond drilling, and what's the cost? It's not air core drilling, is that right?
We're not doing it. We found the core on surface. Logged, easy to identify, chain of command, chain of control, perfectly established. The optionee left the core behind when its option lapsed.
How about that? It's a bonus.
How about that? How about free money?
Thank you.
I love free
How
money.
much capital do you have for drilling?
So, yeah, I hate RC.
Peter, it's
Just,
Paul
yeah, with
speaking.
those,
It's Paul.
Sorry, go
speaking.
ahead.
It's Paul speaking, Peter. I have a question for you. How much money do you have for drilling?
okay, I gotta argue with the question because we don't have to drill. So the question's irrelevant right now. We have a 2-boom jumbo with a 50-foot reach. So we're doing some exploration drilling inside the adit, and that's it. We're not going to be doing drilling from surface for a considerable period of time. And nice to have you back from the bar, Paul.
Yes, sir.
Okay, of the 5 minerals, silver, gold, platinum, palladium, rhodium, I think rhodium is the most valuable. So in your
Yes.
sample, what's the percentage breakdown of all these 5 minerals?
Did you get that, Peter? Percentage breakdown?
I do. I don't have that at hand. It's in the press release of September 26 and October 9. Also with pictures of the doré bar we just couldn't pour. It's all black and crinkled and ugly looking. We know that now that's the palladium, which smelts at around 3,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Silver and gold cooks at 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why we couldn't get the doré bar to pour. We couldn't get it hot enough to melt the platinum and the palladium.
Yes, sir.
So you said you have never drilled. Will you drill?
You bet your bottom dollar.
It's not in the plan right now. Plans change, but right now, just with the two boom jumbo in the adit and with the core that we've recovered, there's no need to drill until we get better science.
I think what Peter's trying to say is they have enough on site now that they can pour and produce, generate capital, get them positive, and then they can start really stepping out and drilling and everything else. Am I correct, Peter?
You are correct.
Yes, sir.
The price of silver lately went up $2 to $3 an ounce. How
Yeah.
much this would be benefit to your company?
Where's your break-even point with silver? He says it's up $2 or $3 in the last week or so, so do you have the numbers that where you balance out?
We made so let me go back in history a bit. I was approached to join the team in April of 2020, right after the mining show in Toronto. I'd been looking for a silver deal, and all I could find was crap. You know, it was nickel with trace silver, or copper with trace silver. I couldn't find a good silver deal. My friend John Carter tracked me down in April and asked me to join the team, which I agreed to, and we made a production decision in May of 2020 when silver was bouncing around $17 an ounce. We decided we weren't going to waste a ton of money on consultants, what Chris Ecclestone of Hallgarten calls the cult of the consultancy. We didn't need a 43-101. We didn't need a feasibility study. We didn't need a pre-feasibility study. The quotes that we got to do a 43-101 on this project were astronomical. And the qualifying language they would have had to include would have made the report itself meaningless. So we put those millions of dollars to work on the property. We got the mine, we rehabbed the mine and built the mill, and we were in production. So a lot of the numbers that people are used to having, what's your all-in sustaining cost, what's your break-even, all of that, we can't tell you in advance. 43-101 won't let us. That information will be in the financial statements and quarterly reported.
Anybody else?
But we made a production decision in May of 2020 when silver was at $17 an ounce. So extract from that what you will.
Yes, sir.
What do your permits allow you to do?
Did you get that, Peter?
I did. The mill itself is on patented land. We have our own well, which was permitted. We have our own explosive license in Arizona, so that's permitted. And the mill is permitted. We've done the architectural study, the environmental study, all of those things. So we are as fully permitted as could be. To the best of my knowledge, we're not missing a permit in Arizona. We're missing one in Idaho. We haven't talked about Idaho yet, and we're getting that now. But in Arizona, we're good to go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, are you gonna
Thanks
be at
for
the
showing up,
PDAC?
Frank.
Are you gonna be?
Hey,
at
is
the
that my old buddy Frank?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
my God.
Hey, buddy.
How you doing? Hey, are you gonna be at the PDAC again? What are you gonna have there? The core, some of the core?
Yeah, you did.
That's a question that we've been discussing internally. You probably noticed we're rather cheap. I hated paying what they wanted last year at PDAC. I am friends with some of the PDAC board members. They've been watching our story with curiosity. So there are discussions about getting into the core shack.
Thanks. What's your share price right now?
18.5 cents today with 65 million shares out.
Thank you. Well, Peter, that looks like that's it for tonight. Again, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, I haven't even told you about Idaho yet,
Oh,
Paul.
do you
Oh,
want
you're
to?
not finished.
Well, I'm not done. And wait,
Two to
there's
3 minutes
more.
special.
Back in December of 2020, we purchased the George Washington mine in Idaho. We've been after it for a while. The gentleman who owned it wanted too much money for it and unfortunately passed away, and his estate sold it to us. We did some exploratory work there on a bulk sample. Bonanza silver is commonly thought to be 30 ounces of silver per ton of material. Our bulk sample rolled out at 55 ounces per ton. We've done additional work at the Idaho, and the numbers just keep coming back at stupid levels. We're doing more science in Idaho. We've busted through the adit. We've made it secure with rockcrete and netting and bolts. We're inside, around the corner of the adit, trying to secure the roof so we can get to the mineralized material. Assuming the historical records are correct, 343-101, so the usual caveats apply. There's 120,000 tons of mineralized material, starting at 39 ounces of silver per ton and running up to 96. And Bonanza silver is thought to be 30. So our plan, which we've been vocal about, is to do a bulk sample on that mineralized material. We have a contract miner engaged for that purpose. Let's say 2,000 tons. And if historically it ran 39 to 96, let's use $40 just for this conversation, because with the zero, then I can do math in my head. 2,000 tons times 40 ounces per ton is 80,000 ounces of silver at, what was it today, 2023? Again, let's use $20 per ounce of silver. That gets us 1.6 million gross USD. There's a cost to the contract miner. There's a cost to the truck we're going to use. There's a cost to the custom mill. It's about 3 hours away. That will toll mill the material for us. So if you're in the mining industry, you can figure out what the cost for the truck is, what the cost for the mill is, and if the historical records are correct, you'll be able to figure out what our net is on those 2,000 tons. There's 120,000 tons there. So rinse and repeat, that'll keep us busy for a while. Very low CapEx using a contract miner.
What's your host rock in Idaho? What's the host rock?
I'm a lawyer, not an engineer.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to look that up for you, sorry.
Thank you.
I'll get it to you, I'll find it.
Thank you very much.
The last time
It's
Peter
in
was here,
one of the press releases.
The last
I think
time
from
Peter was
January
here-
2021.
sorry, Peter. The last time he was here, he presented a cobalt company. And if you remember, he was handing out rocks because you can smell cobalt. So sometimes he doesn't know what he's talking about. But go ahead, Peter, sorry.
I said you could smell the sulfur bearing the cobalt.
There you go.
I would think so.
So if we have no more questions.
What's the share
oh,
structure?
Share structure.
Any institutional or Eric Sprott?
There are no areas.
We've talked to Sprott. We're too small for them right now. There are 3 institutions in the transaction, one out of New York, one out of Israel, one out of Toronto. The insiders own roughly 48% of the company, and of that, the majority is in escrow pursuant to the stock exchange rules on a qualifying transaction. A lot of the stock is in what we call friends and family, or what everybody calls friends and family. We've been telling this story wherever we can, and people are looking at us with some degree of skepticism. Once we get the check assays back, that skepticism should disappear, or at least dissipate, and there'll be a lot more enthusiasm, right? Because there's no platinum in Arizona. There's no palladium. So people are saying, how could you be first? I can appreciate that attitude. And when the check assays come back and confirm that we're right, that skepticism will dissipate.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, here we go. Now for our live presentation tonight. I think I told you one of the companies canceled, so we only have 2 companies. This company is called Sernova Corp. With us tonight is Philip Talakis. He has a PhD. This man is phenomenal. I spoke to him earlier. Christopher Barnes is with us. He would be their VP of Investor Relations, helping them out. So he's around. He can answer your questions as well. And whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we're quite different from the previous presentation here. We are a therapeutics company. And the interesting thing here is this is a very, very simple story to understand. And what we're really focusing on here is the potential of curing type 1 diabetes as our first clinical indication. And so what does that mean? When we talk about a patient that has type 1 diabetes, what's happened to them is that the cells that are living in their pancreas have stopped being able to read blood sugar levels and produce insulin appropriately. Okay, so these are living cells that are in your pancreas. And so what's happened with these patients since insulin was discovered 100 years ago is that they've had to take insulin injections multiple times a day. And these patients are either taking needles of insulin injections or they're on an insulin pump. And the issue is that over time, they start to accumulate all of the side effects of diabetes. So these include blindness, amputations, heart disease, and kidney disease. And so over the past 100 years, what we saw is absolutely no improvements for these patients. But in the past 20 years, science has advanced itself so that we now have the potential to have what we call a functional cure. And so what does that look like? And what we're looking at doing is replacing the cells that have been lost in the pancreas. And what Sernova has done is developed a small medical device that is placed deep under the skin around the belly and the waist. And after a few weeks, when that device is placed into the body, is that it forms what we call an organ-like environment. And then we can take new therapeutic cells that read blood sugar levels and produce insulin and place those into the device itself. And the idea there is that those cells then connect up to the blood vessels. They start to read blood sugar levels and they release insulin into the bloodstream appropriately. So this sounds like a miracle, but all of the scientific information has come together to allow Sernova to be able to do this. And we currently have a clinical study ongoing at the University of Chicago, and we have been able to make 3 long-term type 1 diabetic patients insulin independent. So what does that mean? That means these patients who have been on insulin for 20, 30, 40 years have now been able to have cells in their body that are now producing insulin again, and they're now completely off of insulin. And our longest standing patient right now has been off insulin for over 2.5 years. So that's what this story is about. And I'm gonna go through and just go through our presentation quickly and allow you to answer questions. But the bottom line here is that we're developing a functional cure for type 1 diabetes. And we have, as a Canadian company that is in London, Ontario, where insulin was discovered, our plan is to be the next company to make a significant advancement in this field. And being in Canada, we are planning on having all of these revenues come to us. So with that, I'll just quickly go through our presentation and give you an idea of a little more detail in terms of what we're doing. So again, as I said, we're providing what we call a functional cure for these particular patients. We have a type 1 diabetes program, but not only that, we're not a one-trick pony. We have several other types of applications, and each one of these is a billion-dollar application. So we're also working on patients that have had their thyroid gland removed, and we're looking at replacing the cells in the tissue in their thyroid gland that they have lost. And then also we're working on a rare disease program whereby these are patients that have something called hemophilia A. And this is a bleeding disorder where they're missing a factor called Factor VIII. And what we have been able to do in some of our preclinical studies is replace that factor in cells and be able to solve that particular issue. But this is moving forward, of course. So the other part of this is that we have recently, back in May, announced a partnership with a significant pharmaceutical company called Evotec in Germany. And they are producing for us what we would call an unlimited supply of cells, or these cells called islets, that can treat millions of patients, okay? So this was a deal that we've done just back in May. We'll talk about that a little bit longer. Now, from a cash position, I think a lot of companies right now are almost out of cash, especially in the biotech industry. We have 2 solid years of cash to be able to drive our programs forward. So what is our technology about? So there are 3 parts of the technology here. The first one is the device. And what we had to do is develop a device that you could place under the skin that would accept tissue into the body and form an organ-like environment. We've been successful at doing that. We have done multiple studies to be able to prove that this consistently occurs. The second part of this are putting in the therapeutic cells, right? And our first clinical applications are using what we call human donor islets. So these are the real things that are in your body that control your blood sugar levels. And so we've been able to test these islets in our device in humans to be able to show that these are working. And the third part of this is you have to be able to protect these cells from attack from your immune system. So we have technologies that we've been working on to be able to do that. So we are what we would consider the only company in the world that has all three parts of the solution for people to be able to become cured from a number of these different diseases. So I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quickly, but in terms of the size of the market, I think everybody knows that the diabetes market is enormous. And we have done a payer study. So we wanted to understand what insurance companies would pay for this kind of a technology. So the first question we ask is, I guess you guys are gonna get paid the same as for insulin. But we know that's not true because insulin does not stop all the side effects of the disease. And patients are still having to take all of these injections. So we went and had an independent study done. And what we found out is that the insurance companies would pay between $200,000 and $400,000 per treatment per patient. And the reason is because if we're able to have a functional cure for these patients, then essentially they're off insulin completely and the diabetes side effects go away and the insurance and the healthcare problems that occur will also go down. And it's known that if you control your blood sugar levels very, very tightly, then those diabetes side effects start to disappear. Okay, so this is a real independent study that was done. And so when we look at the market, if we look at 1% of the market, that represents approximately $5 to $6 billion of revenue for our company. So this is a very, very significant product that we're working on. So question you can ask is, what kind of diabetic patients are we looking at? And typically the FDA wants you to start off by working with the sickest of the sickest patients, and that's what we're doing. So the patients that we're working on in our study, and you probably hear about this a lot, are the patients that when they take an insulin injection, they don't know that their blood sugar levels are dropping, and they can actually go into a coma and die. So these are the patients that you hear about where they will drive off the edge of a road and get in a car accident, or for people that, adults that have, parents that have children that have type 1 diabetes, they will sleep in their rooms with them so that they can keep an eye on it so they don't die in the middle of the night. So this is a very, very serious patient population. And insulin itself doesn't help these patients. The only way we can help these patients is with a cell therapy approach, because the cells produce insulin, and when their sugar levels start to drop, then the cells are producing other hormones to bring those sugar levels back up naturally, just like you have in your own body. So this is something that's really important from the cell therapy approach. So I'm not going to go through all these details, but we're, again, working with patients in our clinical trial at the University of Chicago that have no ability to produce their own insulin. So when we show that they're producing insulin, they're coming from the cells in our device. So that's a really important thing. And important thing is that our primary endpoint is safety of the device and of the cells, but the secondary endpoint are some important points that are key for these particular patients and diabetic patients. And these include a reduction in a number of these, what we call hypoglycemic events. So in other words, stopping it so that parents don't have to sleep in their children's bedrooms. And then also an improvement of some of the long-term diabetic features, which is called hemoglobin A1C that everybody hears about on the news all the time. So what we have shown is we have two cohorts of patients. And the first cohort, we have shown our first 3 patients have achieved insulin independence. And our second 3 patients, we're continuing on in the study right now and working through those patients. But what we have done, we've gone back to the FDA and we've learned an incredible amount in terms of how many cells we need to be able to get insulin independence, for instance, what density of cells, a lot of different things about the patient characteristics. And we've gone back to the FDA and asked them if we could start a second cohort of patients. And we've just recently been allowed to start that second cohort. So when you're doing this work in the pharmaceutical industry, especially since this is a very disruptive technology, if the FDA allows you to do a second cohort of patients, that's a really, really good sign. So we're on the right track. So I always come back to the patient, because when I started working in this company. It's a very disruptive technology, and we talked to endocrinologists, and they said insulin is great. And we talked to even the Juvenile Diabetes Association, and they said insulin pumps is all we're working on. And then we went and talked to the patients, and they said, we hate insulin pumps, we hate insulin, we hate the diabetes side effects, and we want a cure. And that's really what got me really excited to work in this company. And so this is our first patient that has become insulin independent. That is a statement from her, and she's now 2.5 years free from insulin. And the important thing is that she's taken over 20,000 injections, and she's been on insulin pumps and all of these different things, and is now completely off of insulin. So so what's the difference between our first and second cohort of patients? So a lot of this is, we have learned an incredible amount, and in our second cohort of patients, we're actually using a slightly larger device into which we can put more therapeutic cells. And the reason is that we are pretty confident about what dose of cells we need to get insulin independence in a whole range of patients. And so that's what we're working on. And the other really interesting thing is that we had a patient that ended up getting COVID. And we had a couple of sleepless nights there because COVID has an effect on type 1 diabetes. And that first patient got through COVID with flying colors. And so we realized we want to be able to treat all type 1 diabetic patients. So we wanted to increase the dose of the cells in there, and that's what we're doing right now. So we're planning on, we've already implanted a number of patients, 2 patients so far this year. We just got clearance, and we're planning on getting the rest of the patients implanted and with cells in the new year of 2023. And we're anticipating that we're going to have data coming out from that second cohort in the second half of 23. So I talk about this collaboration that we're doing with Evotec, and working with the human donor islets that we're doing right now. There are only a certain number of patients that we can treat. Just like in an organ donor, there's only a certain number of organs. But what we wanted to do is find an unlimited supply of cells that we could treat millions of patients. And so we had collaborations with a number of major pharmaceutical companies who are developing what we call ethically derived stem cell technologies that form complete functional islets. All right, so this is like the same thing we have in your body. And we ended up doing a deal with Evotec, which is a company in Germany, which has thousands of employees around the world. They're a NASDAQ-listed company. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. And what ended up happening with them is that we actually tested their cells in our device, and we got fantastic results. And then they went out and they tried testing every other device they could find. And then they came back to us in August of 2021 and said, we want to do a deal with you guys. You're the only technology that's actually working. So we ended up doing that. And Evotec did a $27 million investment in our company. And the way this is working now is both companies are working together to get to the point where we start our clinical trials. And importantly, Evotec is responsible for manufacturing the cells. And so they bought a company in Italy that is what we call a GMP iPSC manufacturing company for these cells. So Evotec is going to be responsible for producing these cells for us. And we're planning on, right now we've been doing all of the studies to get ready to start the clinical trial, and we're looking at starting this clinical trial in early 2024. So we're really excited about moving together along with this group. So I always like to do a little bit of science stuff, but these are the pictures of the islets that Evotec is producing, and they are fully functional islets. They are produced exactly the way human cells islets are produced. So, and we have shown long-term, these are blood sugar levels, and we've shown long-term up to a year or more in animal studies that these cells are working beautifully. So anyway, so the goal here is that we're going to have this trial up and running in early 2024, and then we'll have data coming out after that over a period of time. But this is a very, very significant advancement, not only for our company, but for type 1 diabetic patients and investors. So I'll just very, very briefly talk about some of the other technologies we have. This is a technology that we've licensed in from the University of Miami, and we call this conformal coating. And what we're doing here is we are able to provide cross-linked polymer coating that goes around the cells, and that coating is able to help protect those cells from attack by the immune system. So the idea is that we manufacture those stem cell derived technology, we can coat them, and then we would place those into the device chambers itself within the patients. And in that way, we're looking at eliminating the need for any kind of anti-rejection medications so that we can treat all patients with type 1 diabetes. So this work is aggressively advancing right now and moving forward towards the clinic. The other program that we have, as I said before, is working with the first company in the world to be able to be working with patients that have lost their thyroid glands for benign reasons. And what we have been able to do is take human thyroid tissue, place it into the device, and then place it in our preclinical studies, and we've been able to recover the function of the feedback loop just for thyroid, just like we have for type 1 diabetes. So this is a population of about 150,000 patients a year in North America alone that are having their thyroid gland removed. And these are people that do not do well on the thyroid medications. We have published data. So this company is not just a fly-by-night company. We have very, very strong scientific roots, and we have scientific peer-reviewed publications out on all of our technologies. And then the other application is for hemophilia A. What is exciting here is that we've done 4 years of research, and what we've been able to do is take a sample of the patient's blood, and we've isolated a certain cell type. We've corrected the gene for Factor VIII, so those cells are now producing that factor that's missing. And then in preclinical models, we've been able to recover the function of clotting. So this is a program that we're looking at moving into the clinic. And this is a $10 billion a year market right now, where the patients are having to pay about $200,000 per year for injections of Factor VIII. Again, it's been published. So we have a number of important upcoming catalysts, and there are a number of these in 2022. We've just gotten clearance from FDA to be able to start the second cohort of patients. We've already enrolled 2 patients in the study in the second cohort, and with cell pouches, that surgical procedure was very, very successful, and we're looking at transplanting these patients in January. And then data will be coming out over time, over the 2023. And we're obviously, planning on implanting the rest of the patients in 2023 and continuing on with data. And the idea there is that as the data comes out, we're looking at going and talking to the FDA towards the end of 2023 and designing with them the pivotal study. So that will be the final study that we're going to do for these cells before approval. And then as we're going forward in 2023, we are again aggressively working with the Evotec cells and moving that into the clinic. And so there'll be a lot more information coming out about the studies that we're working on with them. And then in early 24, we'll be filing an IND or the regulatory documents in the US and plan for Europe to start that clinical trial. So I will stop there and answer any questions.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
2 questions. So the FDA is medical device?
It's a
and
combination.
therapeutics?
It's a combination product, medical device and the therapeutic cells, and so we're regulated as a biologic in the biologics department, but the device department also looks at all of our regulatory documents.
I have a question for you people. How many people here have diabetes or know somebody that has diabetes? Yeah, so this is very important, so like this is a
By
case
the
study.
way, our deal with Evotec, we can treat type 1 and type 2.
And the second one is the share structure. How much, it's like Evotec owns how much?
Sure. So Evotec owns about 6% of the outstanding shares. There's roughly 300 million shares listed right now. Fully diluted, it'd be about 330. Just over half of that is the one last remaining tranche of warrants, which expire March 1st at $1.70. So that's a little ahead of where we're trading right now, so if they end up expiring, then there'll be no more warrants in the company.
Chris, how much stock do you control? Like, that you know, that you are
So
very
it's
safe in
largely a
that?
retail health story. There's roughly, if I include in the institutions, management, and institutions and management, we're around 20%.
So there's a big float.
There's a fairly large flow, yes.
Yes, sir.
Do you have it in the whole planet, there's no other company to give you competition?
There is one other competitor out there that is in clinical trials, and that company is Vertex. It's a large pharmaceutical company. They bought their stem cell technology from a small company for $1 billion a few years ago. And they're slowly moving through the clinic, and so we believe, and they're actually taking their cells and they're putting them into a blood vessel in the liver, whereby the cells end up in the liver, and we don't consider that a commercial product. So Sernova has the entire product where we have the device, we're putting the cells into that device, we can control where those cells are sitting. If we need to, we can remove the device and put in more cells over a period of time, so we have a much better commercial type approach than they do.
Yes.
Does the technology work the same way for type 2 diabetes? And do you have a patent on it?
We have patents, we have multiple patents that are not just patent applications, but full patents that are around the world. Because over time, we're looking at working with a major pharmaceutical company who has marketing distribution for type 1 diabetes. So we have very, very strong patents around the immune protection technologies, around the device technologies, the therapeutic applications, and also the, in the stem cell world.
And what about type 2 diabetes?
And type 2 is included in that too. That's just part of it.
It's working the same way?
It's all working the same way. So what we would do in type 2, so if we think about patients that have type 2 diabetes, they end up, their insulin is not working as well. So what happens over time is that their islets, which are the cells, they have to work overtime and they start to die off. So what we're looking at there is the potential of putting cell pouch in and giving a top-up of islets to be able to help keep those islets alive while they're going through their therapies to be able to lose weight and that sort of thing.
Roughly 30% of the type 2 market requires insulin.
Okay.
And those are the patients we can.
You have three major products, hemophilia, diabetes, and I forgot the third one.
Thyroid.
Thyroid. Which one do you expect to hit FDA approval first?
It would be that our main program, and that's really all we have to do, is the diabetes program. And we would look at our donor islets getting approved first. That would be followed by the islets with the stem cell derived technology.
And you expect that when? 2025, 2026?
2023.
That's about 2026 or 2027. And then the thyroid program, because we're working with the patient's own tissue, we think that we can get that even approved faster, maybe in 26. It just depends. We're working with regulatory authorities.
There's
right
no
now.
immune suppression issues with the thyroid program.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it might have been said, I'm not sure, but for how often do you need to implement cells into your medical device for it to work? Is it learning from itself, or is it like a weekly, monthly?
So that's a great question. So when you think about the islets in your own pancreas, they last your entire life. So once you're sexually mature, you have those your entire life. They don't reproduce. So what we believe that if we create a proper, healthy environment for those islets that we put in the device, they will last for years and years. And so our longest patient right now, and your question is a great question, it's something that everybody's asking us. Our longest patient so far has been insulin-free for 2.5 years. What I believe is that if the cells, and if you put them in a poor environment, they will die within a few weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we have this patient going on for 2.5 years is very, very positive. When we did our independent study with insurance companies, we said, if we had a product that lasts for 2 years, what would you guys pay for this? And that's when they came back and said between $200,000 and $400,000 per patient. So we know we're in that range already.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What time frame are we looking at, like after you go, if everything falls into place and you have all your clinical trials and everything, what time frame are we looking at where you have FDA approval, where this therapeutic is then available to the general public and type 1 diabetics?
Yeah, so I would say probably 26, 27, somewhere in that range. But if you think about it, there are only a few major pharmaceutical companies that are producing insulin right now. And all of them are losing their patents. And what I see happening a lot sooner than that is the potential for one of those companies to come in and start working with Sernova and potentially either do a significant deal or take us out. So when you think about it, the competitor that we have in Vertex, they do not have a diabetes franchise. They don't have marketing distribution, but they just got into this field because they're trying to work on cell therapies. The potential collaborators that we're looking at working with have sales forces in type 1 diabetes, and there aren't a lot of companies, and our technology is very, very highly respected out there among the pharmaceutical world.
Okay, we'll take one more question, and then you can both talk to Chris and to Philip while you're having a cocktail. Yes, sir.
Is the device invasive?
The devices are made up of materials that are already approved by FDA. So I always like doing things in as simple a way as possible. And the device is placed just deep under the skin. And what we're doing right now is we're developing a toolkit that will go along with the device to the surgeons, whereby there's something called a trocar, which is like a little straw, and you put that through the skin, and then you can feed the device through and place it under the skin, pull it out, and it's done. And even now, the patients go home the same day the device is placed. So it would be considered minimally
It's
invasive.
a 15-minute procedure. The device itself is about the size of a business card.
So that won't limit to any activities after?
You won't know it's there, you won't see it there.
Okay.
So our patient that has been insulin dependent for 2.5 years, the surgeon being a scientist, he said, can I remove those devices? And so we can look at the cells and see what they look at. And the patient said, sure. I will put Sernova in my will. And so it shows you, we have patients that have had these in long term and they have absolutely no issues whatsoever.
Okay, one last question, and then.
So how far can you actually go with Evotech? And where could there potentially be a kind of blossoming of, something very big? Because they're integral to your existence.
Yes.
And you're integral to their longevity of production. If you want to speak about that, just for a second.
So we had a collaboration with them several years ago, and it went very, very well, where we tested their cells in our device. And then after we did our deal, so I'll just go through this very briefly, but back in August of 2021, if you remember, I said this other competitor of ours bought a stem cell derived technology for $1 billion. And so when Evotech came to us and said, your device is the only one in the world that we tested that actually works, we want to do a deal. And they came to us and said, back in August, we want a $100 million upfront payment. And they immediately realized, we're not going to do a deal if they do that. So we negotiated with them for quite a number of months and then came to agreement whereby we ended up paying no upfront payment for these cells. And so we have a really, really good relationship with them. And then we signed that agreement back in May, and then the two companies have been working very, very closely together to get all of the studies done to be able to get us into clinic.
But the key thing to point out or to know is we control, like if we get bought, whoever buys us then owns the partnership with Evotech. And we are the ones who can say yay or nay or pull the trigger. They're simply the supplier.
One last question. One last question. How many patients have done, what's the sample size that you've done this on in total?
So we have, it's a total of 14 patients.
Okay.
But in this particular study, but the patient population is able to be small because we're working with the human donor islets right now. So we think that a phase 3 study would be about 30 patients. So it's not like an enormous patient.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
I have one question. Are either of you diabetic? No. I'm just wondering for your sincerity of the business, like what
I'll
you're
give you a
doing.
little bit of an idea. My PhD I did at UBC in the Department of Medicine, and my PhD was in diabetes, right? And after that, I joined a little company called Angiotech. And it was a disruptive technology, and I was the first scientist in that company. There were 3 of us. And we ended up developing the first drug-eluting coronary stent that was licensed to Boston Scientific and has treated millions and millions of patients.
Should have started with that. Should have started with that.
Yes, and it became a $2 billion company. So we have, all of our senior management have over 20 years' experience in successful technologies.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. They're going to be around for questions. And from Sophie and I, thank you so much for showing up tonight. I know it's holiday season, everybody's got stuff to do, but we really appreciate it. Best of the holidays to all of you.